Hello everyone and welcome to my session at Scottish Summit 2021. My name is Ulrikke Akerbæk and today you will learn to understand the invitation process in the Power Apps portals. Right, let's get started. First, I will talk a little bit about myself and then we'll dive into a demo showing you how the invitation process works out of the box, what core components in every portal template can we use for the invitation process. And then we'll look into how to extend this, make it more pretty and more automated with Power Automate. But before we do that, let me reach out to our sponsors. Without them, events like this would not be possible. So please look at their websites and their offerings and have a look and click around to make it worth their while to sponsor events like this. So ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Redspire, and Agilicis, and of course Hitachi Solutions, thank you so much for sponsoring this event. Right, so I am Ulrikke Akerbæk and I am the branding lady, as you can see. I work as a business applications consultant at a consultant company called Skill in Norway. So I worked with SharePoint for 5 years before I transitioned into the Portals product as the branding lady. So I was working on master pages, injecting JavaScripts, doing CSS work to make SharePoint more user-friendly and more pleasing to look at. So back in the day, SharePoint needed some love and care to be a good tool to use every day and to look at every day. And so that became my expertise. So everyone wanted a SharePoint site. But everyone wanted their SharePoint site not to look like SharePoint. But when modern SharePoint pages came along, I transitioned over to the Portals product when Microsoft bought that product from the ADX Studio. It felt like a natural fit for me. I've been working with web pages ever since my dad actually set up my first website at age 12. We were the first in our community to have internet and to have a home computer. So I've been tinkering with the web ever since, creating web pages for myself and for friends, for the school newspaper, as a freelancer. So when the Portals product came along, it felt like a natural fit for me. And I'm still doing much of the same work that I did when I did SharePoint. So now it's more about how to make a portal not look like a portal. And I'm going to just plug one great podcast that you all should see about that topic. Actually, Franco Musso and I are talking with Nick and Nick on the Refresh the Cache podcast, this January episode, I think it is, about that very topic. So if this is interesting to you, please check that out. Now back to the user experience. One of the first things that your users will experience when they're interacting with your portal is the invitation process. So when you think about the user experience, this is probably where it all starts. And if you're interested in user experience, please check out the User Defenders podcast by Jason Ogle. It's a very good podcast for those interested in user experience and in user experience design. Now, as I talked about the invitation process, so I created 3 blog posts that go along with this talk. You can all check that out on my blog. You have the URL to that to the Scottish Summit tag that will show you all the blog posts related to this session, and the QR code right there to get there. So the invitation process. Let me cite Microsoft documentation. I think they put this very plainly of what the invitation process is all about. So use the invitation feature of Portals to invite contacts to your portal through automated emails created in your Microsoft Dataverse. The people you invite receive an email, fully customizable by you, with a link to your portal and an invitation code. This code can be used to gain special access configured by you. Right, so that's what we're talking about today, guys. This is the invitation process. So you have a contact with full name and email. That's the only thing required for this process. You create an invitation for that contact, and by default, an invitation code will be generated. Then you add that email to a workflow, sending that email to the contact with that invitation code. And then when the contact clicks on that invitation link, they will redeem that invitation. So that's what we're going to look into today. Now let's dive into the demo. We will look at what comes out of the box. We'll look at how to make this more powerful with Power Automate Flow. And then how to make it a little prettier using some custom code right there. And now, as we go along, have in mind the different scenarios that you can use this for. So this is not, the invitation process is not only for giving your contacts access to your portal, it's also about other things that you can do, other scenarios that it can fit. So have that in mind as we go through this. Right, let's get into our demo. So first of all, let me just give you a pro tip right here. So you can see my URL, make.preview.powerapps.com. That's the address that we use. Of course, select your environment. And then we go into apps on the left-hand side. And this is where you can see I have my portal here. I have my portal management. And then I click on the portal management and get into my portal site right here. So let's scroll down, and on the left-hand side, you see the security, and we have the contacts. I open my contacts list, and I can already, I've been cheating a bit. So I created my account, my contact up front, and it's my skill address. So I have created my contact, that's Ulrikke at skill, where I work, and my work email. Now, if we wanted to use the out of the box, we could just create an invitation. As you can see, I've opened up the contact, and we have a create invitation button right here. So I click this, and you can see on the left-hand side, it will take us to invitations, and we have a new invitation on our hands. And this hasn't been saved yet, but it already has the name of the contact as name in a text field. It is of type single, put a pin in that, I'll talk about that later. And then it has a relationship to the existing contact that I came from. If we look into this advanced tab right here, you'll see an invitation code field, but right now it's empty. So when I save this invitation, what the system will do is it will generate a huge invitation code. It will be characters, numbers, different signs, and it will be, as you can see, pretty long and unmanageable. But still, it will work. So we can go up onto Flow right here, and we can choose Send Invitation. That is a built-in invitation process. Workflow, out of the box, Send Invitation. But before we do that, let's have a look at what that actually does. So back into the Power Apps start page, we go into Solutions on the left-hand side, and we find that portal-based workflow solution. Now, it's not very intuitive how to find these things. So if you're unsecure or don't know where to find them, first you can have a look around, or you can ask the community. So I open up this solution, and as you can see, we have that Send Invitation workflow right here. So let's open this up. Give that a second to load, and while that is loading, I'll go grab my portal's URL, choose copy. I'll go back into my Send Invitation workflow, and this is active now, so we'll have to deactivate it to see the actual content of the emails and the other steps. So first of all, the first step you see is the encode invitation code step, which will create a much more manageable invitation code, not that long, just some characters long. The next step is create an email, then it will send the email, and then we'll update the invitation status to sent. Now let's look into the email right here. Now, there's no way for your portal to know when your portal is provisioned what the actual URL for your portal will be. So it's important, even if you want to use this default out-of-the-box workflow, that you go in and you customize this URL right here. So by default, this will be like localhost 700, I think. And so you always have to go in and edit that URL. Now the rest, you don't have to edit. So you have the register, which is the page that you want to send your user to. And then you have something, and let's put a pin in that too, return URL to, and these characters right here will be the -- show the home page. That will turn out to be send the user to home page once invitation is redeemed. And then you have an and, invitation equals invitation code. Now, this is all fine and well, and we can do some customizations to this email. But what I actually prefer is to use a Power Automate flow for this work instead of this workflow. It gives me a lot of flexibility instead. So let me move into back into the make preview powerapps.com and into flows on the left hand side, and you see my cloud flows right here. So I have the flow send invitation to contact. Now this is where the first blog post comes into play. I have a blog post about how to create this flow from scratch, and please follow that blog post to create a flow like this, and I will go, there's where I go into details. But I will just go into and show you each step right now. So this has a trigger when a record is selected. So in your model-driven app, this means you can select one or multiple contacts, and this flow will run for each contact. Now in the old workflow, you would have to create multiple invitations, and then you could send all those invitations in one go. So this actually makes it a little more user-friendly. You don't have to create the invitations in advance. So we have the default environment and the contacts entity or table. You initialize a portal invitation code, initialize a new variable as a string type, and you use the GUID expression to create a GUID. Now that would be an unique invitation code. Then create another variable called action URL, where you paste in the same thing, your portal's URL, register, and invitation code. Then we create an email to the contact's email address. Now be wary, if we search for email right here, you'll see that on the contact you have these 3 email address fields. It's important when you give the contacts your email, use the primary email address field. Then, as you can see, you have multiple editing capabilities, and you have a capability to write code. So this is where the extensibility comes in. I know that the Outlook email step also have some extensibility, so I like to write code. So that's why I like the flow approach a little better than the old workflows. So here you can write some code. I like to add that action URL link as a button, and then I prefer to write it out in clear text for those, you never know what kind of email client the user will have, so that if they cannot just simply click the button, they can always just copy that URL and paste it into their preferred browser. Then we create a portal invitation to be redeemed. We set full name to the invitation name. We set it to single. We paste the same invitation code in, and this is a very important step. So this is how the contact will be redeemed. If that invitation code wasn't there, the system wouldn't know what invitation to redeem. We set the status to sent, and then we create a relation to the contact that we wanted to invite. And we terminate as successful. Now let's give this a little test run. So what I can do then is I can go into let's just find myself here. we go back into the contacts. We check Ulrikke's skill contact. And then from the flow here, we can choose run, send portal invitation to contact. Right, it will load the flow. It will ask me to confirm my connection. And then I can say run flow. Now you see, you can go to the flow runs page to see if that was successful. And this is exactly what we'll do. Now, this will open up the flow in another tab for you. And you can see if the run was successful or not. And you can actually go into the flow and see all the details from this session. So as you can see, it was run 18 seconds ago. It was successful. And if I open up this, I can actually go into the email and get that link. So if I open up the email step here, I can see what it was sent to, what the subject was, what the text was like, and I can also grab that URL with that invitation code that it generated. So let me just copy this out and go into my incognito window, paste this into my address bar and hit enter. Now, as you can see, this page is kind of heavily customized, and this is where the second blog post comes in. So if you want to know how you can customize your sign-in, your registration, and your redeem pages to make it look a little flashier, then I have a blog post about that as well. So let's go in and complete registration. I will click this complete registration button. As you can see, the invitation code is up in the URL. It will get me to the register for a new local account, or I could choose one of the identity providers that I have set up. But for these purposes, I will just put in a username. I will select a password. Let's see if those were the same. I hit register. And as you can see, I have access to all the subpages and everything right here. As you saw, and as I talked about earlier, we have the different kinds of invitations. So you have the single and you have the group. Now, when they're redeeming, if you have a portal that is not customized, you will get to the register site and it will give you that text field for invitation code. And it will have that little tick right there, a little checkbox saying, I have an existing account. Now, this confused me the first couple of times that I went through this. I couldn't figure out what that account meant. So what it actually means, when you're redeeming your invitation, you put your invitation code in here. And if it's not for getting access, you can say, I already have access to your portal. I just want to redeem this invitation for that voucher or for that discount code or whatever it is. Now, so this should probably say I already have access or I already have my login. This is for a group invitation. Now, because this is kind of confusing, when I branded my portal, I choose to actually remove both this invitation code snippet here and this checkbox and only have the register button. I actually also renamed that register button. And this is, for usability purposes, not to confuse the user too much. Now, this is the second blog post that I want to kind of put a pin in, how to customize that registration page and that invitation, or that redeem page to make it look like that. And let me just show you real quick. That is content snippets. So I will not go into detail to how you can customize your page. That is for the blog post, but I will show you quickly what it is. So it's injecting and putting in additional classes to that page. So if you try to customize that profile page or the sign-in page, that's simply not web pages you can go in and configure like any other page. There's no web template for the sign-in page. But all pages on portals, as far as I know, will render the content snippet related to that page called page copy. So even though the register page doesn't have a page copy content snippet, you can always go in and create it and it will render. So what I did was, in the content of that content snippet, I put a script tag which will, with jQuery, go in and remove classes and add classes to the HTML structure of the page, making it possible for me to, one, put different classes on the different types of pages, and then add functionality and add styling. So if I go into my Portals Design Studio, of course, as you know, you go into the, let me show you real quick. So if you go into the apps, you find your portal and you go to edit, this will take you to the Power Apps Portals Design Studio. From the left-hand side, you choose the theming and then edit CSS. And then I have a CSS called sign in right here. This will show you what kind of styling I have. So I grabbed the new classes that I added with the script tag. I set, for instance, a background image, different background colors, and then I can hide existing elements on the page. Now I have one styling for the sign-in page, and I have another for the redeem page, and I have another for the register page right there. So, and that will all be covered in that blog post. Just have a look at that if you're interested. So that is how you can make this page with the invitation code look a little sleeker. So I can go into dash register right here, even though I'm logged in, and you see what that looks like. Right, so what this will do is it will prohibit you from using the group invitation. So be wary. If you want to use that group invitation feature, you will have to not hide that checkbox. Right, moving on. How can we extend this? Right, so there is some things out of the box that you should consider using. First of all, you have the ability to select an account that will be set as the parent account for that contact on redemption. You have the ability to trigger workflows. So when a customer or a contact redeems an invitation, a workflow will automatically be triggered. Now this could be used for instance, if you have an employee self-service portal and you want to trigger that onboarding process, so you already have your contacts in your Azure AD, so they don't need to actually gain access to your portal. That's already embedded. What they will need is, for instance, that web role. You want to trigger that workflow, that trigger that onboarding process, maybe other business processes. That's when this comes in handy. And as I mentioned, the web roles, you can select which web roles should be assigned to this contact upon redemption. And last but not least, the expiry date. You have the ability to set an expiry date for your invitation, and you should absolutely use that. Just think about the security implications it could have having invitations out there without expiry dates. And if you should use this, make it very clear in that email that this will expire on this date, and what the contact should do if you should have reached that date. It's also a good way to ensure good data quality on the back end, making it possible for you to clean up and delete expired invitations. Now, a couple of things that I want to point out. As I already mentioned, the redirect after login. There's also a blog post about this on my blog, how to make it not go to that profile page. So you would add, as we saw in that old school workflow, a question mark return URL. And this could be, for instance, these characters right here, this combination would automatically return the contact to the start page of your portal, the home page, upon redemption, not to the profile page. There are also some site settings that you can set in the authentication section that you have that ability to set true or false redirect to profile page on sign-in. But think about, maybe you have a portal for customer self-service where you don't want to send the user to the profile page and you don't want to send them to the home page. Maybe you want to send them to the customer self-service list, for instance, to see all your cases in your case management homepage. So think about that as a good way to redirect your users to the appropriate website or web page. Now, also another blog post that I have, and the reason I mention this is because I get a lot of questions about this. How can I lock my portal behind authentication? Or how can I make the start page of my portal, my home page, the login page? Now, this is very useful for those of us that have that community plan portal, which is, it's not a trial, so it doesn't expire, so it can last for years, and you can build up this demo portal for testing purposes and for community purposes. But you don't want to get that huge bill at the end of the month. So for instance, during this session, you've seen my portal's URL for my community plan, and you can go in and click around, and you can trigger a lot of page views, and I will get that huge bill at the end of the month. So to stop that from happening, I can lock my portal behind authentication. So there's a blog post about how to do that. And essentially, I can just show you within the Portal Design Studio. It's actually quite easy to achieve that with the new permissions so that we have on the right panel right here. So what I did was I went into the Design Studio. And on the left-hand side, you have your pages, your sitemap. Go into the home page. And then on the right-hand side, you have this permission at the bottom of the right-hand panel. This is where you can see page available to everyone. And this is actually now set to no. The only selected roles can have access to this. And then it says that permission does not apply to child files. And this is because on the home page, and I did this actually the first time, I excluded the child files. And that will also exclude your CSS and your JavaScript and your images. And so then that home page will not look very good. So you need on the home page to include those child files. Now I can open this up if I want, and it will take a second to load. And then the page will be accessible to everyone. And I can go into the left-hand side again, and I can choose what pages. As you can see, now it's all open. Now, if I go back here and I take away that permission, you'll see that all the pages will have that lock symbol. Meaning, for instance, this services page, it inherits permission, parent page permission. So this, in the Design Studio, this makes it very easy to select which pages and which areas of your portal you want to have open for unauthenticated users and what you want to hide behind authentication. So for me, it's important that I hide all my portal pages behind authentication. Now, I just want to say, this is not a workaround to get around buying licenses. So you pay for all the logins that you have anyways. So this is for, like I said, the community plan portal, or for instance, during development, where you don't want everyone to get access to your portal yet while you're developing it, then this could be very handy. Now, as I'm wrapping up, please let me reach out to a couple of resources I already mentioned. So Refresh the Cache podcast with Nick Dolman and Nicholas Hayduke. A great podcast overall, and I'm actually on the latest episode talking about how to make a portal not look like a portal with Franco Musso. And then Nick Hayduke again as Engineer Code Actually, his latest Portals community call this January was about the invitation codes. So if you didn't get all the answers from my session today, please check out the recording of that Portals community call and follow him. Every month he has this community calls, and it's great work. So thank you for that, Nick. And then last but not least, the User Defenders podcast about user experience and for user defenders. User Defenders podcast by Jason Ogle. Now, I just want to say thank you for listening to my session, participating. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on any of the social platforms. Send me an email, comment on my blog post that I usually follow up on that. And enjoy the rest of your sessions today and the rest of the Scottish Summit. And I hope to see everyone at physically at Scottish Summit next year. So thank you so much and have a great day.